Welcome to Ethos Effect Podcast.
Welcome to the Ethos Effect Podcast. After building and learning from failures,
We discovered our ethos and leveraged it
to scale, sell, and build again our seven-figure businesses.
whether you're starting out or leveling up.
This podcast is your source for innovation and lasting impact.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ethos Effect Podcast. I am your host today, Donovan Ryckis. And today's going to be a little bit of an intro, get to know us type episode. I'm actually going to be interviewing my wife, my business partner, VIP, very interesting person.
Thank you.
And getting to know her and her story a little bit and getting everybody acquainted with you, Chelsea Ryckis.
Awesome. Thanks. Nice to be here with you, husband.
So you are the COO of our company, and also an employee benefits. Oh, you're not?
I changed my title, remember?
I forgot.
Yeah, about a year ago.
You're a VIP in the business, though.
Yeah. My title for everyone is now President of Ethos Benefits.
President, yes. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm pretty much a COO, if we're being honest, so that's fine.
I think both roles could be very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Prez. Wanted to give everybody an intro to you, to your life. Obviously, I know it well, and I'll touch on some things that I find interesting or color on that particular time in our life. But why don't we start by telling people where you're from?
Sure. I am Canadian. Oh, Canada. All the things. I was born in Montreal and lived there until I was 7, surrounded by entrepreneurs from day one. My dad and his entire family owned roofing businesses and still do, actually, in Montreal. My dad moved our family over to Calgary, Alberta. And actually, I think it's important to note, I wasn't born by myself. I have a twin brother.
Yes.
My better half other than you. You're my other better half. I don't know. But he is amazing. So the two of us and my little sister and my parents moved over to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which most people would know because they've probably flown there to go to Banff, which is the Rocky Mountains.
Gorgeous place.
Gorgeous, beautiful place. And I've watched my parents run a business since day one.
Okay. So Canadian, obviously it's not necessarily easy to get into the United States and to get a green card. So tell us about your process. How did you end up coming over here?
So because I had a twin brother, I ended up being very competitive in life, but also in sports. He is naturally talented at pretty much everything he does. So I spent most of my childhood just trying to keep up with him, especially on the athletic front. So we were playing boys baseball. I was the only girl in the entire league, actually, in the little league.
It's honestly kind of hard to believe that back then that they allowed it. Like now I feel like there's some PC around that and like,
Right.
Well, you got to let the
Gender
women
equality.
play. Yeah.
No, it wasn't
But
like that.
back then it wasn't. So
No.
it's kind of impressive that you were always playing with the boys
Well,
anyway.
I didn't really suck that bad, and I think that's why I was allowed to play. Like, I definitely wasn't the best. My brother was by far the best on the team.
You weren't the worst.
But I wasn't the worst,
Yeah.
and that was good. So it was Canadian Thanksgiving, which is not the same as American Thanksgiving. And my brother and I were throwing the ball in a backyard, and for some reason, I guess it hadn't snowed yet, which is nice. So Canadian Thanksgiving's like early October. And there happened to be a scout for Team Canada softball. So to put it into context, baseball is traditionally a male sport. And then when women want to play the sport, they play fast pitch or fast pitch softball. In Canada, when I was growing up, there were leagues, but it wasn't a big deal, mostly because you can't play in college in Canada. There's club teams, right? Club rugby, there might be actual university rugby teams, but there was no softball university team.
Sure.
Big sports in Canada, basketball, volleyball, hockey, obviously, but there wasn't really a future in softball. So in Canada, so I never really thought about it. Well, this scout comes up and he's like, why don't you play with the girls? And I regret this so badly because I'm a pretty big feminist now and very much female empowerment with all that I do. But I remember, my little smart ass at 15 years old being like, what? I'm better than the girls. Like, I don't play with the girls. And he's like, well, you could pay for college. Like you could. And the thought of not burdening my parents with that was awesome. And he's like, you could travel the world. You could play Team Canada. You could do all this stuff. And yeah, I made the transition to girls softball when I was 16. which is actually when most girls are starting to receive scholarship offers. So I was just entering the sport for the very first time. And imagine, the physics of it. Baseball, your pitch is overhand. It's coming down. It's going left and right. It drops, right? But it's overhand pitch. Fast pitch softball, it's a windmill pitch. So the trajectory of the ball is completely different, which was a bit of a learning curve for me. But yes, eventually ended up with a D1 scholarship to Stetson University. And actually, if I'm being transparent, which is one of our big things in our life, if I'm being honest, I didn't have a scholarship at first. So they gave a scholarship to one of my teammates. And my coach worked it in that, like, hey, can she come? She'll be a walk-on the first year. Let her prove herself. This kid's, she just started. She's really good. She's got some athleticism. And the coach at Stetson University, Frank Griffin, forever grateful to him, took a chance on me. And he let me come down. And within a couple months, I started over a senior in right field. And the next year ended up with a full ride scholarship, went on to become the captain my senior year. And it was really good 4 years.
So one of the things that's different about us is you obviously knew you were going to college because tell us what type of student you were in high school.
We are very different in this regard.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed school. I loved learning. I loved excelling. I think one of my strengths and definitely a weakness is if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be the damn best at it. Like this is my podcast, so I can
even if
swear.
There's no measurement of that.
Even if there's no measurement of success, I will be the best. Definitely a fault, a personality fault, but also has contributed to success as well. But yeah, I loved school. Not only were you often recognized for being smart and trying hard and having that effort.
Well, you were recognized.
Right. But
Yes.
to me, it was just an easy equation. Work harder than everybody else. And there were a lot of people. I literally remember grade 2. This girl was smarter than me. And it pissed me off. I know it sounds psychotic to everybody listening, but this girl was so much smarter than me.
Psychotic 2-year-old.
Psychotic, just a crazy grade 2-year-old. Yeah, I remember there was a spelling competition and she was just so good. And I'm like, her name was Sammy Wackerly. And I'm like, man, I want to be like Sammy Wackerly, and that is literally the first moment of my educational years where I remember being competitive with someone and then working my ass off in the evenings to try to beat her as a second grader. It's crazy, but I love school. It wasn't really about beating everybody as much as it was, okay, maybe that's what it was. I don't know, but it was just that competition and collaboration. I also love collaborating. I don't have to be the only one excelling. I'd love to bring everybody and be a part of a bigger communal effort. So I loved school. I miss it. Honestly, those were the good days.
So going to school, going to Stetson, moved from Canada, very, very cold place, to Florida.
Yeah.
Start going to school, obviously all by yourself down here in the States.
16 when I moved away from my family.
Captain of the softball team.
Yeah.
After in your senior year, I guess. Doing very well in school. And what was your plans in school? Where were you headed?
Good question. I was determined to be a doctor. And I think it was one of those things where, what's the profession that I can impact the most people, but also have some prestige, right? And there was definitely a component of that. But it was really, how can I help people? And I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be a teacher. You think about all these traditional careers and honestly, kind of like you, and I know you said this in your interview, I never knew what I wanted to be when I was little. I told my parents 2 things. One would be the first female baseball player on the Yankees. When I was playing boys baseball, that was what I was going to be. And then the second, once I got a little bit older, I was going to be the first elected female prime minister of Canada. 100%. So I really actually thought that for a long time. And then you get into college and you realize that, politics are
not fun
or transparent whatsoever, not in line with who I wanted to be. So doctor was just an easy choice. Although I'll tell you, sciences didn't really come easy to me, or math. Much more of a social language person, communication person, probably should have done that. But yeah, that was the plan, to be a doctor. And then it kind of all ended.
Well, no doubt you would have been the best doctor, even without any metric for it.
Thanks.
I don't know how you would be, how you could quantifiably.
No, you couldn't.
But you would strive to be it.
Yeah,
sure,
and
which
probably killed myself.
It would make you that. So there's no doubt you would have been a great one. I think you would have hated it though,
Me too.
personally, knowing everything about you now. So what stopped that? And tell us a little bit about what happened to take you off kind of this path that seems so obvious, seems so clear that, you already headed into pre-med. What happened?
I was hit in the head with a softball off the field after practice, hit right in like the lower temporal region on the left side, cleared to play a little too soon. And it was truly lights out. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. I remember trying to write a chemistry final my senior year, just a couple weeks after, and getting sick on my exam. I remember wearing sunglasses in school. I obviously couldn't play, but could barely get through school. I had a 4.0, which I was really proud of, obviously, given what motivates me. And then, I could barely finish these final exams. And I was very lucky. I had some amazing professors that were very understanding and helped me through it. My GPA dropped significantly. And it was pretty clear after the brain injury that med school was not in the cards for me. So I went home, where my family graciously helped me with some brain injury rehab. So I actually did the same functional neurology rehab program that the famous hockey player Sidney Crosby did. And within 8 months, I was doing a heck of a lot better. My main symptoms were holding conversations were really hard, lights were brutal, noises. If the TV was on and someone's having a conversation, I could not handle it. Reading was tough. The biggest issue that I had and still have is quick math, or like numbers in my head. I need a moment, or a lot
calculator.
or Donovan. I need somebody else to do this quick math for me. So, yep, 8 months of the brain injury rehab program. And then what I was finding was there weren't a lot of resources at the time. This was right before the movie Concussion came out, right? Like,
right. In the NFL, right?
Yeah. And it was literally a year or two before concussions were a big deal. So the protocols surrounding how do you treat an athlete who very obviously has a concussion, they were there, but they weren't always enforced. They weren't always the latest research and technology. So I became pretty passionate about, figuring out how to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else, number one. And also, when I would go see doctors or just people in general, an invisible injury is really hard. Like, the only people that knew that I was as fucked up as I felt were my parents, because everybody else was like, you look fine.
You look fine, right? Bet you heard that a lot.
Oh, all the time. You look fine. There's nothing wrong with you. You speak so well.
Yeah.
But my parents were like, no. And they kept saying like that light and that fire in me was like totally diminished. And I went through a really, really dark time where, because I didn't have what made me me, that competition, that zest, that like charisma, like go-getter attitude, I had none of it. I was just like a shell of myself. I was very depressed. It was a very dark time. And I made a lot of decisions at that point in my life that I would have never made.
Mm-hmm.
I started working a 9-to-5 job for somebody else. Never in a million years. Watching your entrepreneurial parents, I didn't know what I wanted to be growing up, but I knew I didn't want to work for anybody. And I dove headfirst into that. I let other people tell me my worth. I got married to somebody.
Not to me.
Not to Donovan.
Yeah.
Yes. I got married to my college sweetheart. And for both of us, it was a terrible decision. And I just feel like in so many ways, because I was going through this brain injury and, really didn't have myself present, I made a lot of decisions in my life that I'm very grateful that I was able to kind of reverse. But yeah, it was kind of a shitty time, but I do think there was a lot of building blocks there for entrepreneurial life.
Yeah. So one of the stories I love, and I framed it for you because it was such a important moment to remember and capture, but you started in nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
which, given your personality, your desire to change, to do good, all that kind of stuff, seems like it makes sense. But again, like you said, 9-to-5, someone else was kind of controlling your time so much you couldn't even go see your family in Canada as much as you wanted to because you didn't have the kind of vacation time to do that. So
or the
you're,
money.
yeah, you're down here in the States by yourself, you know, and your
Still
family's
kind of
up
fucked
there.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about
Sure.
salary and your request and what you did and what you were hoping to get back from that nonprofit?
Yeah. I think, like Donovan, like you said, when I couldn't be a doctor, how else do you help people? Well, you fundraise so doctors can do research, so people can have access to certain programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was working for a very large nonprofit, fundraising corporate fundraising, and making, well, I can't remember the exact amount, but somewhere around 30 grand a year. And ended up blowing the event out of the water, fundraising a ton of money. Everybody was excited. After the event, went and asked for a raise. And I had a business plan on how I was going to raise even more money the following year for that same event. And I asked for $33,000. So just
$3,000 over
$3,000 raise.
over 52 weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You do the math, not me, right?
I don't even want to.
They said, we don't have it budgeted to give you a raise, but we can give you a bonus. I was like, oh, sweet. Okay, right? So waiting. A couple weeks go by, a couple months go by. Go ahead and ask very nervously, oh, it's coming. Then I get something in the mail, and it's a check. And it was my bonus check. And it was signed by the president of the company, and it was for $10. And that was one of the moments in life where you're like,
congratulations on $30,010.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, what am I doing? Like, busting my ass. I believe in this so much, and they don't really believe in me, right?
Yeah.
And that was the moment where I kind of started getting my, like, I don't know. I don't want to say mojo because it's a stupid word, but
I thought you were going to say Chelsea-ness.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of started to get that, like, fire where I'm like, I know I've said the F word a lot, and I apologize, I'm Canadian, but, like, F that. No one else is ever going to tell me what I'm worth again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the end of that.
Yep.
So one of the presenting sponsors for the event that I worked asked me to come on board, and it was into insurance. And I genuinely felt like that was the devil. Like, I was like, corporate America, like, absolutely not, right? Didn't understand it, never been around it. But I was intrigued that the story they told me was about how to help people with these products that were affordable. And you hear about medical bankruptcy. I had my own pretty terrible run-ins with the American healthcare system during my brain injury. And so there were a lot of reasons why I thought, you know what, I'll try it. Why not? And ended up doing pretty well and opened an agency at the age of 25, one of the youngest agency owners in the country.
I remember.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You were there.
Yeah. So we framed the $10 check, and it sits behind her, behind your desk right now.
Yep.
And I think that's a great reminder of all that.
Yep.
Like,
nobody should ever tell you your worth. And
especially, you should be
especially
rewarded for what you're doing, you know, and you were crushing it. So.
well, and especially, you know, for entrepreneurs, when you're, or if, like, let's say you're somebody that believes you want to be an entrepreneur, you think you've got it in you, but you're just kind of scared to take that leap. Like, just effing do it. You know, like, everything always works out the way that it should if you are doing the right things, you've got the right work ethic, you've got systems and processes and procedures. And I'm very grateful for the time I had with that sort of like franchised agency model, because it really did give me the systems, the structure, the processes, you know, which I would have never learned on my own.
Right.
So that's another thing is like but I can't tell you how many people I had, so many people that were really close to me during that time that said, you're opening your own agency? Like, you don't know what you've been doing. You've only been in the benefits industry for 6 months. Are you effing crazy? Like, there's no way. And I literally was told, don't come crying to me when you fail. How could you do this to your husband? How could you possibly...
Again, not me.
Again, not Donovan at the time. Yeah. Just you need to work for a large agency. You're never going to know what you're doing.
And I think it was within a year you were out earning his salary.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But then that was the catalyst of coming back to me after the brain injury. It was like, okay, I can do this. I do know my worth. And what was so inspiring to me about that business model was that you empowered other people with you. So my success was really dependent on me lifting everybody else up around me, which is something that I'm super passionate about.
Right.
It's no fun going to the top by yourself. Like, I want my employees, whatever business I'm doing, like Ethos Benefits now or this agency model then, I want everybody to win at the same level as long as they deserve it. You know?
So this is around the time I met you. I think you were a year and a half maybe or so into that agency. And I met you, and I had been in financial services for 6-7 years, I think, somewhere around there at that point in time. And here you were, this newcomer, and I knew you had, a little over a year maybe, and you had like 20 some agents working for you. And I remember I was like, I don't know whether to be impressed or to laugh at her, because like
probably both.
Well, the realities of the industry are just much more difficult than when you think you get
brutal.
started, and you're still in that kind of that new phase.
Yes.
But I was impressed that you got 20 some people to agree to follow you, that you were leading them. So I showed up at your grand opening, and it was kind of like when we started doing business together.
Yeah, and it was a pretty difficult time in my life. I mean, you're starting a new business. I was going through a divorce at the same time. My whole family's in Canada, very far away. I had one community to lean on, and that was a yoga community, because I was teaching yoga on the side to help pay for the rent of my agency. Just hustling through and through. I would teach at 5 a.m. 3 or 4 days a week, and on the weekends as well, to help cover the rent and just kind of get through. But it was a very difficult time. But when I look back, it's so empowering. Like, I remember I had to sleep in my office. Just crazy shit that now you're like, really? Was that actually my life? I remember I had to borrow money from my parents, which I don't know why I grew up this way, but in our family, like, you take care of your shit. And of course, my parents have always been incredibly supportive, but like, asking somebody for help is not really the way that I was raised. To have to ask them for help. When you and I started doing business together, I had to ask you for help at one point. Like, these very humbling, vulnerable moments in my life where I felt like a complete failure. But they were ultimately just like laying the foundation for the rebirth, of me being me. And then I started to meet all these people, yourself included, that understood who I was and wanted me to be the Chelsea-ness, right? Like, didn't want to dim that, didn't think it was too much, didn't think it was annoying. And then most importantly, use that to fuel a beautiful business where you can hire and work with the people that have the same values as you, that you want to bring to the top with you, and make real change. Like, I can't tell you how grateful I am for all of that shit, because I apologize, I keep cussing, but I'm so grateful for it. It has totally got us to where we are. And I know people say that all the time, but it really has just been the foundation of all of it.
So to catch everybody else up, I was doing kind of group health part of employee benefits. So the group health, the dental vision. Your agency was selling the supplementals. So things like accident insurance, cancer, hospital, term life insurance, those types of products. And we ended up meeting, probably at a networking event first, right? So we met at a networking event. The lines of coverage you were selling, I wasn't selling. And obviously, like, your personality and the way you presented yourself, like, I just trusted you to be in front of my clients. So I kind of gave you the yes. We started working together. You started partnering on my cases. Then eventually we decided to go off, and I was going to quit being a financial advisor. You were going to quit your agency, and we were going to kind of start our own employee benefits agency, all encompassing.
And we did. And it was crazy.
Tell me about it.
Okay. Where do we start? We had both, you had been doing it for a couple of years. I was new to the health insurance side, but but
0 employees again.
Yes,
right?
0
employees, and I wanted none.
And
at that time.
Yeah.
At that time, I didn't want any, because I didn't know how to manage. I had no idea.
And so Donovan didn't want any employees. I wanted hundreds of employees. Like, the beginning of the podcast, if we're going to do this shit, we're going to do it right. We're going to be big. That's always been my vision. It's changed a little bit now. I think it's more important to just do really quality work as opposed to be the biggest or the best, whatever that means anymore. So I do want to make a note that I've outgrown that kind of childish, immature mindset. But yeah, so we started in J. Donovan Financial. We were co-partners, 50-50 in the business. I remember the day we hired our first employee. We had literally no idea how to manage somebody, how to onboard somebody, how to build a team culture. It was a little rough the first couple years, but what wasn't rough was our sales. Our messaging has always been so different and so transparent and fiduciary based. We closed our first case. It was, well, not our first case, but our first large case, 500 employees. We had just landed in Cuba for a vacation. We were going to take like 3 or 4 days off. And I have this photo on my phone that I reference often when I feel like things are hard. We did an open enrollment for 500 employees. We prepped for it in about 4 days. And it was just the two of us working on crappy Cuban Wi-Fi.
Very expensive.
Very expensive,
Cuban
crappy
Wi-Fi,
Cuban
yeah.
Wi-Fi. And I remember being like, what the hell? Like, you know, we actually did this. Like, this isn't that hard. You think that during the sales process, right? And then you get to implementation. But yeah, the growth that happened in the first few years of that business will forever be a motivator to me. And it was just so fun. Then you get to the part of the business where retention is just as important as sales.
Retention processes, employees.
Operations.
Yeah.
And one of us kind of had to take that baton and run with it. And because you were doing so much of the design on these complex self-funded plans and ultimately the account management, it was really up to me to take operations and run. And I think I've already mentioned this. I love people. Like, I love my employees. I think it is the greatest honor as an entrepreneur to employ others. I truly believe that to my core. There is no greater honor. And I just wanted to be the best at building teams and building a good culture. But it was, you know, I'm sure there's people out there that might listen to this podcast and say they were shitty bosses like at the beginning. And it's true. We probably were.
Yeah.
But I can, you know, I'm very proud of the work that we've done in the evolution of our leadership. It has not been easy for both of us. But yeah, so that has been kind of my passion within the business, is building the operations side, the processes, the accountability, the feedback, the culture. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things about our obviously living and working scenario, is the fact that we actually started working together first.
Yeah.
And I think and I've been in financial service for a long time. And you see some people and some agencies partner up, and I never understood why, because I'm like, well, I can do what that guy does. I can do what she does, right? Like, I could just do it. Why would I give 50% of it away? Right. And I swear it never made sense until I met you. And I was like, those are all the things I'm missing. Like, I got this side of the puzzle done, but like, I have no idea how to do any of that. And that's when actually having a business partnership made sense for the first time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and as I alluded to earlier with my brain injury, I needed your analytical skills and a lot of other ones, but that was definitely very helpful. Yeah.
So the business today, the things we're doing today, open question. Tell us about Ethos Benefits today, what we're doing, customers we serve, maybe a little bit about the book sale that we just did recently.
Sure.
Sold off kind of 80% of our business.
Yeah. Ethos Benefits. So we transitioned or rebranded about 1.5 years ago at this point. And the goal with the rebrand was to get fully in alignment with our values. Our values being transparent advising, getting to the root cause of the problem, which is claims, but nobody wants to talk about that. Everyone wants to talk about changing carriers, networks, all the stuff that, you know, barely moves the needle. And I really think that we wanted a brand that represented our culture, that one day, and this day came way faster than I thought it would, but it would be such a living, breathing thing in our organization that our employees would believe in it. So instead of it being like, hey guys, we're doing really disruptive work. Like, you are changing the world with the work that you're doing. You're putting money back in employees' paychecks. You're doing great work, you know? Instead of it being that, it was like the culture of transformation and being disruptors was just like ingrained in the people that we had, and they take so much pride in it. And I know that that's where we are right now, and it's amazing. But yeah, we design fiduciary-based healthcare strategies that work over multiple years. And there's a few people in the industry, you know, I feel like it's a small group of people who are doing this really well, and they're amazing. And like we said, they're challenging the status quo every day, and that is not easy. But there are a lot more benefit brokers out there that are just status quo. And there's a lot of things that are wrong with that. Number one being misaligned commission, misaligned compensation is what I'll say. So when a premium goes up for an employer, the compensation shouldn't automatically go up for the broker either. So that was one thing that early on we, 10 years ago, we're already fighting that. But that's one thing about us with the transparency, aligning the incentives, and all of that. That's a lot, right?
All right, Chelsea, please share with us anything else that you have on your mind.
I believe that you are as good as the people that you surround yourself with. And in my life, I've been very lucky to be mentored by some amazing people. Then there was that period with the brain injury where, I kind of lost the light, lost that guiding star, didn't have a lot of people that were encouraging me in my life. Then I found you, and all of that sort of changed, honestly. And after that, I feel like once you surround yourself with the right people and you get very clear on your intentions, amazing things happen. And I'm really proud of where our business is today. But I'm, with the sale, like Donovan mentioned, we sold off 80% of our business on September 1st. And all of that was done in an effort to further align ourselves with our bigger goals of impacting as many people as possible. All of that is amazing, right? You hear like business sale, you've got your values aligned, all that's cool. But none of it matters without your team and the people you surround yourself with. And I think that the last thing I want to say is just how proud I am of the community that's around me. My employees, my industry colleagues, my friends, obviously you, my family. I think it's very maybe underrated how important those things are. And so thank you to everybody in my life that is an amazing source of inspiration and always encourages us to keep going. The disruptor life isn't the easy life, my friends. So that community is very important.
Intro to Chelsea Ryckis. Looking forward to hosting more podcast episodes, talking with some great guests, and getting to know other people's ethos as well, what's transforming them. So please subscribe. If we said one smart thing, it's worth it. That's typically how I take on education, at least. If I can listen to something for 30 minutes and get one smart sentence, it usually pays me back. So hopefully we can provide the same for you guys. Thanks.